Hey y'all, welcome back. This week we're going to be in Galveston. You know, of all the times we've traveled through Galveston, there are so many things. We're always surprised that we find things on every trip that we never realized was there. And so in this video, we're going to show you some of those lesser known, interesting historical sites that we've driven by a million times and never even noticed.
Yeah, from the first free public library in the state of Texas to the invention of the margarita. So stick around.
So we're in Galveston, and you know, one of the things we like to do when we're in an area, even when we've been too many times, is take some time to kind of explore the area and see what we can find. And we came across the Rosenberg Library. Now, I've been to this library probably 25 years ago, but I had kind of forgotten about it. And this is more than just a library. This is the Rosenberg Library. It's named for Henry Rosenberg, and he was an immigrant from Switzerland. In the 1830s, he moved to Galveston, in 1843, he moved to Galveston. He was a railroad tycoon, a banker, a merchant, did very well, and so became a major philanthropist. The town of Rosenberg, Texas, which is not far from where I grew up, and near our old Sticks and Bricks home actually, was named for him. And this library, he donated the money for in 1900. It took the place of the old Galveston Mercantile Library that was launched in 1870 down here in Galveston. And it not only holds a lot of books and things like that, but it's also a Texas history museum with a lot of the original artifacts from Texas becoming its own nation. So let's go take a look. Welcome to the oldest continuously operating public library in the state of Texas. This library indeed was a gift of Henry Rosenberg, who passed away in 1893 and left a lot of his money to the community. He didn't have any children. That flag that we just passed was actually a flag from the Spanish-American War. From the very beginning, this library not only was set out to collect books and manuscripts, but also historical items. This bell, for example, has been here for many, many years. It is a bell from Mission Concepcion, which is part of the San Antonio Mission's National Historical Park. And it was going to be melted down for ammunition back during the fight for Texas independence, but it survived. It lived in a Damon barn for many years and then made its way here to Galveston. The library was doubled in size in the 1960s, and this is the newer wing. But it was great to see. We were shooting around, folks. It was great to see so many folks using this library. The upstairs is a computer lab. The downstairs is a really cool children's section. And just over 1 million books and manuscripts and reference materials and historical items. The great thing about this that we couldn't show you is since from the very beginning, this library has focused on history as well as learning. This area upstairs is being redone completely right now so that they can display more of the historical artifacts. They've collected so much over the years, they needed to rework the museum section, which will be awesome. Okay, so we just found another great place to stop in when you're in Galveston. Wealth of information. It's right across from the Rosenberg Library, and the street address is actually on Broadway. It's the Galveston Island Visitor Center, and it's a neat little kind of cubbyhole over here in the end of the building. Great folks in here to share information. Thank you, Kayreen and Diane. And we got all kinds of interesting things on things that we haven't even done yet here on the island, but they have just tons of useful information, and make sure you, and coupons for restaurants and also museum admissions and things like that. They have a winter Texan program for folks that are coming down during the winter to stay a little bit. So make sure when you're in town you stop in and see them. And you can always find them at galveston.com, and they're also really active on social media. We're connected to them, I think, on Instagram and Twitter. And so yeah, make sure you check them out. Super place, great folks. So amongst many of the firsts in Galveston, and as far as firsts in Texas, you'll find the Star Drugstore. Now, this wasn't the first drugstore in Texas, although that was here in Galveston. But the Star Drugstore was built in 1886. It has a second floor that looks down into the first floor, and it was an area where the druggist had cots where the patients could lie so he could make sure that the medication wasn't having adverse effects on them. And now it's a lunch counter. It was the first desegregated lunch counter in the state of Texas. We had a fantastic lunch here. They served breakfast and lunch. The horse-shaped counter down there where you eat was actually added to the drugstore in 1917. Just a fantastic, fun place to enjoy breakfast or lunch down by the Strand. Then we went over to the Bryan Museum. Now, this is the Bryan Museum, and holy cow, you guys need to check this out. It's only been a museum for 5 years, but this was a Galveston orphanage starting in 1895. I'm getting my fives mixed up. It originally had a very intricate, ornate roof on it. That roof was destroyed during the Great Hurricane of 1900. But all 29 adults and 29 children who took refuge during the storm here in this building survived the Great Storm of 1900. It continued to be an orphanage for many years. Then it was a private home for a little while. Then it was purchased by the Bryan family. Now, the Bryan family, if you're not familiar in Texas history, Stephen F. Austin's sister married a Bryan. So they have a long history of Texas. This is a fantastic museum. What you're seeing here is a replication of the San Jacinto Battleground. This picture of Sam Houston was a picture he took when he was considering running for President of the United States. Never knew that. Fantastic place for Texas history, for Western history, for cowboy history. And the building itself is so interesting and phenomenal. Original building, original floors, amazing place to wander around and spend several hours. Now, they are part of the, there's a group of museums where you can get entry across the country, NARM, so check that out if you're interested. National Register of Historic Places, right here. This is where the Balinese room used to be. And it says, built and operated by Sicilian immigrant barbers turned bootleggers Sam and Rosario Maceo. The Balinese Room was an elite spot in the 1940s and 50s, featuring entertainment by Frank Sinatra, Bob Hope, George Burns, the Marx Brothers, and other top acts of the day. Patrons of the private club included Howard Hughes, Sophie Tucker, and wealthy oil barons from nearby Houston. For decades, the pier was the center of the Maceo's gambling and business empire, and known as the finest club and casino in the Southwest. The Margarita Cocktail was invented here at the Balinese Room in 1943. The Texas Rangers finally closed the casino in a famous 1957 raid after years of trying. Johnny Mitchell, George's brother, operated a swanky restaurant here from 1965 until the early 1980s. Rock group ZZ Top wrote and performed a song about the club called Balinese in 1973. Texas Monthly magazine called it the Texas Nightclub of the Century in their December 1999 issue. In 1997, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Attorney Scott Arnold in 2001 bought, restored, and reopened the Balinese Room, featuring live music, several nightclubs, retail shops, and other attractions. But during the early morning hours of September 13, 2008, the structure was completely destroyed by Hurricane Ike. This is the 1932 Santa Fe Railroad Depot, and it is home to the Galveston Railroad Museum. Fantastic museum for anyone interested in trains or historic transportation. Just absolutely love this place. You know, Galveston was home to the first railroad locomotive back in 1852, so it seems fitting this would be here. I feel like I've stepped back in time.
Yeah.
So this museum is home to what they call 40 pieces of rolling stock and the largest collection of dining car china in the Southwest. So definitely something to check out while you're here. There's lots to see and do in the Galveston Railroad Museum. So one of the first things we saw in the rail yard here at the Galveston Railroad Museum is they have a chart that shows the high water levels for a lot of the storms that you may have heard of that have come through Galveston. Down at the very bottom is Hurricane Harvey, because actually Harvey did not impact Galveston very significantly at all. Hurricane Alicia in 1983 is right above that. The 1915 storm that came through Galveston came up to here. I'm about 5'6.5", 5'7". Hurricane Carla in 1961 would have been over my head. The 1900 storm, which is the great storm that devastated this area, right here, September 8th, 1900. Hurricane Ike, I can't even get close to reaching that high, in 2008. I mean, that is incredibly high. I mean, I can't even, there's probably, what, a foot above my hand, and I'm reaching up as high as I possibly can.
Yeah, 8.5 feet or something probably.
So they had to redo, I mean, obviously all of this after Hurricane Ike in 2008. This post office car is a 60-foot heavyweight car built in January 1914 by Pullman. It's one of 10 identical all-steel post office cars built for Illinois Central. Number 100 was decommissioned around 1968. What a way to carry the mail. So it says a crew of 6 post office clerks worked in this car while it was en route. 2 sliding doors are located on each sides of the car. The doors were open when stopped to pick up and drop off mail at a station, but if the station was not a scheduled stop, the mail cranes were used to pick up new mail while throwing out the old. And they said the big cities and towns would have a bag of mail. The smaller towns, the mail would be put into the pigeonholes and things. What we love about this museum is there are a lot of the cars and locomotives that you can actually board and check out up close and personal, which is really, really interesting. They also own about a mile of track, and they do weekly caboose rides on Saturdays. And I was just impressed even with the number of cabooses that they have on display, since you don't see those anymore. But it's these things are so massive. It's amazing to stand next to them and just, even the ones you can't board, just get a sense for how big they were. Galveston Railroad Museum.
Yeah, well, this is really a cool stop. If you're in the area around Galveston, strongly recommend it. We showed just a little bit of it.
There's a lot more to see here. A lot of the cars you can walk in and really check out and spend time in, and they have a model train section also.
Yeah, there's a couple buildings here that you can go in and, you know, have smaller stuff that they show, and dishes, and I mean, it's really cool.
We came here the first time back before Hurricane Ike came through in 2008. And there was a lot to see then also. Unfortunately, some of the trains that were here at the time were destroyed by the hurricane. I think we showed you the water level that came through here.
Right, 2 of the big locomotives they totally lost.
Yeah.
They sold it to someone, but they ended up scrapping them.
Yeah, so they've got some parts and pieces from those trains that were salvaged, but they still have a lot to see here. And I think there's a few things maybe they've added since then also.
I think so.
So definitely worth checking out while you're here at Galveston Island. We've been here for a couple hours, and we kind of went through kind of fast because we didn't get here till 3 o'clock and they close at 5. We could have spent a lot longer, so especially if you're into trains, this could be a whole afternoon for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it gives me more energy to want to see other, you know, trains and rail stations and stuff along our journey. So we'll definitely stop at some other ones.
Oh yeah. Oh, and this guy behind us, this is an 1892 locomotive. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
And you can get up in it back here in the back. It's one that you can climb on and check out up close and personal.
Yeah, so next time you're in Galveston, come down to the Railroad Museum. Yeah, thumbs up. Yep, that's the free parking here at the Railroad Museum.
In all the years we've been coming here, we never knew that was here. So you learn something new every day.
Yep, absolutely. We didn't use it. We just found out about it when we were in the museum. But we got free parking, so it didn't matter. But
so it's just behind the Railroad Museum. You turn off of Rosenberg, which is 25th Street, onto Santa Fe Place. And the parking is directly behind the museum.
Yep. So, and then if you want to see the museum and then do a few things at the Strand and then come back to the museum, you can. It's free parking. That's what
awesome.
They told us. So, little tip there.
So the famous pirate Jean Lafitte made his home here on Galveston Island. There's another location that we found off Stewart Road where his fort was at one time. This was his house, and he had cannons on the second story to protect it. They say his gold and his treasures might be buried throughout the land, throughout the island, but I don't know that any of it's ever been found. This is off of Harborside, just east of 15th. Galveston was a major port of immigration in the 1800s, and actually they had plans to build an immigration station when the federal government first started building these major immigration stations like Ellis Island. They chose Galveston as a major immigration area for this area over New Orleans even, and they had planned to build a major station like what they have in Ellis Island, New York, on Pelican Island here in Galveston, which is where the Naval Museum is now. That never really happened. They built a smaller version in 1913, and And that only lasted a few years because, well, a couple years, because the big hurricane of 1915 damaged it, and it closed in 1916. This building was built in 1933 as a new immigration station, and it functioned as such until 1940 or so, when it was transferred to the customs office and used as a U.S. Customs house. But I know a lot of German immigrants came here through Galveston, and that's why you have a lot of settlements in central Texas of German descent and Czech. And there's actually some great history in the Galveston Maritime Museum, where the Alyssa, the tall ship Alyssa is, that talks about immigration through Galveston back in the 1800s and early 1900s. So if you're interested in that, check it out.
Well, this is a National Historic Landmark. In 1976, they called it a historic landmark. We don't know what it's for.
It says East End Historic District, but it doesn't really explain more than that. It says it's a gift of Henry Rosenberg, but that a lot of the stuff in Galveston is, a lot of the landmarks. But I guess we're going to have to look this one up and see what it is.
Yeah, we'll look it up if we don't find anything. And
do you know?
Do you know? Let us know. If you've been here, let us know what it might be.
Yeah.
We're interested. So we'll see you Wednesday.
Safe travels.
And happy camping.
Bye.
Bye.